Hello everybody, this is Nahaz, and men lie, women lie, but stats don't lie. Wanted to give you guys a quick summary of what's happened in Epicenter so far. Been already a great tournament with the playoff phase set to start here in a couple of days. Group phase results, a little bit surprising here in Group A. Team Secret and LGDFY are going to be your top two seeds. There had to be a series postponed from today. They will play one more group phase best of three series head to head tomorrow. The winner of that series will go directly through to the semifinals of the tournament, whereas the loser will have to face off in the quarterfinals against Invictus Gaming. Liquid are the other team that are through to the playoffs in Group A. They will face Virtus Pro in the other side of the quarterfinal matchups. EG, meanwhile, have claimed the top seed in Group B. They're directly through with a bye to the semis, and IG will again have to go against the second place team from Group A. Wanted to talk about EG. They've looked like the top team in the tournament so far, continuing their very strong showing where they won the Manila Masters. And we talked in previous videos about the importance of their draft mix-ups. I think they've been really, really good again at this tournament. Traditionally, when we talk about teams and their hero pick diversity, we talk about the number of different heroes that they've picked in X number of games. So if you compare EG to Invictus Gaming in these last two tournaments here, Manila plus what we've seen so far at Epicenter, EG have picked 42 heroes in 23 games. IG have picked 41 heroes in 28 games. So maybe pretty similar with a slight edge going the way of EG. When you look a little bit closer, when you look at the way that they've run their different heroes, EG just has so much more overlap in terms of running the same heroes in different roles. So what I've done is I've just made a chart of the unique heroes played. This is available from DatDota, and I've also just manually put a box around all the heroes that they've run over this period in different roles. EG, so much more overlap, particularly when you look at the mid position. Now, this is a little bit exaggerated because EG have tried out a couple of very unique mid heroes here so far at Epicenter. They've run Ancient Apparition and Earthshaker in the mid role with SUMAIL. We'll talk a little bit more about those specific performances later on here in this video. But I think you can see, even apart from that, even if you throw away the AA and the Earthshaker, there's just so much more overlap where they've also featured SUMAIL mid on the Bristleback today, which overlaps with Artur. They've featured repeatedly SUMAIL mid on his Puck, very strong with that hero, overlapping in the offlane role with Universe. Razor, another hero that overlaps with the carry position. When you look at their at Zai, overlaps with Universe playing the Clockwork. Both of their supports run the Wisp as well as the Trinket Protector, two heroes that are incredibly strong so far in this patch. You also have Night Stalker and Sand King, which can overlap with the offlane position as well, although they don't often feature Universe on those heroes. So just a tremendous amount of flexibility early in the draft in terms of picking up, especially in the cores when you're EG. IG, on the other hand, again, when you look at the number of different heroes run, it looks like they have plenty of hero diversity, but they just have very, very differentiated hero pools, particularly when it comes to their two core positions. Burning, really the only hero that overlaps between mid and carry for them regularly is going to be that Troll Warlord. And the only other hero that overlaps mid with any other position is they will occasionally run that Lina in the support role. Other than that, though, the only mix-ups that they really feature are the standard 3-4 tweeners, Clockwork, and Slardar. When you look at their supports as well, because of what Bobica has done in the last couple of patches, he's just been so effective at that roaming support position. Their support pool is really unusually differentiated between their two support players relative to other teams. You can see Q is playing the hard 5 almost every game, where Bobica is still sort of stuck in that last patch, that last meta mode where he's running these roaming supports. More and more in 705 and 06 across these teams, the support role is much, much less differentiated, especially in the current patch. A lot more teams running these more interchangeable looking support duos. So it's a little bit of concern for IG. IG, of the top 4 teams at Kiev, they're the one I think that has the most work to do in terms of their drafts and their lineups. to be a factor at TI. Still, I have a lot of faith in this 5-player roster. I think they're very good, but I do think that they have a bit of work to do before the International. Just some concrete examples, because I want to talk about how EG has employed this strategy so successfully. And I'll look at their series with Planet Odd, the former Thunderbird squad. Just for example, in the first game, they use an open that's been very, very common for them throughout the last 2 tournaments, that being the first pick puck. Now, interestingly, when they first pick puck, there's a reason that a lot of other teams aren't picking this hero first phase. It gets very heavily counterpicked, and you can see Planet Odd come back here with their second and third picks. They take the Shadow Shaman, got those 2 instant disables that can really lock down the puck, as well as the Earthshaker with that instant cast Echo Slam, followed up by the long disables he can stack on top. So the puck is already arguably very heavily countered. Now EG are going to come back with the Crit Crystal Maiden, been a staple for them. Really enables a lot of what they do in the lanes as well as the mid game. Can't argue with that. It's the second phase of the draft where things get really interesting. So Planet Odd continue to counterpick the puck very heavily. They're going to take Ricky, a hero that with the Cloud can really bother that puck, cancel out a lot of his escapability, as well as a hero that's being compatible with that dual mid. So if they want to take a hero that's maybe a little bit of a matchup disadvantage against the puck, they can really protect Wii in that mid lane. The problem is EG, they see 2 things. They see that this support duo is, number 1, a little bit weak in the laning phase. So despite those 2 disables, Shadow Shaman is pretty slow. He can get punished in certain safe lane matchups. And Ricky really is a support that, unless he has that correct dual matchup mid, he can really get punished in the lanes, period. So they're going to pick a very strong roaming support for Zai in the Night Stalker. Again, you have some mix-up value here in that this is a hero that can be moved to the offlane position as well. You see a lot of teams doing that in the current patch. And it's a hero that's very good, in particular, against the Ricky with that long duration silence and also the early roaming potential. So EG have really given themselves an advantage, I feel, in the first 3 picks. You can see Odd are a little bit worried about their lanes. They come back with their 7th pick, the second pick of the second phase. They come back with Razor, a carry that, number 1, counters a lot of the hero pool that EG like to run, and more importantly, is very, very stable in the laning phase. He's not going to need as much help from these other 2 supports as your other carry position heroes right now are going to in either the mid or the safe lane. But EG say, that's fine. We're going to pick a carry that has a lot of range, that can stay away from that static link, really mitigate the anti-carry potential of the Razor, as well as enabling those early push strats that Planet Odd maybe aren't really ready for. Razor is a hero that certainly is very strong in the mid game, but he's not necessarily the best pusher, D-pusher at that point. And now EG are going to be able to come back with their last pick. They're going to be able to come back with the Lena. They know that Odd really need a lot of damage out of their last hero, because that's kind of the problem with the Razor as well as these other 3 picks. There's really not much in the way of sustained physical damage unless Razor can be reliably getting those links off, which against a Drow lineup you can't. So they're going to be forced to go at TA. EG know this. They're going to come back with the Lena, which again is now going to give them 2 cores. It's going to give them all 3 cores that both benefit from the Drow aura as well as can stay away from the static link. Razor doesn't really have a target, and you can see in that game SUMAIL just goes off in the mid lane. Artura actually got picked on a ton in the early game. Planet Odd really rotated to that. They focused very heavily on that top lane, really made Arteezy's life miserable. But as long as EG or OG, this goes for really any of the top teams, as long as they've got 2 of their cores farming in the early game, they're going to be just fine. EG's got that. They've got the roaming advantage. They won the draft here pretty handily, I feel. In the third game, it's the same open for EG. Now, Planet Odd have learned their lesson here from game 1. They're not going to counterpick the puck as heavily. They're going to come back with the Darkseer Earth Spirit combo, very strong in that mid-game team fight, as well as having some early roaming potential. The Earth Spirit does offer some counter to the puck, but it's not nearly as dedicated a counter pick as you saw in the first draft. EG say, fine, we're going to go with that puck CM combo that we're so confident in. They went with that in game 2 as well. Planet Odd, I feel like they do almost the same thing. It's very different here. Obviously, Disruptor, much more of a laning and mid-game team fight oriented support as opposed to the Riki. But the important thing is they show their support in their off lane in the first 3 picks, and they show some weakness in terms of their supports in the laning phase. The Disruptor and the Riki both can struggle with that laning presence. EG is going to come back with exactly the same concept. They're going to say, we're going to pick a roaming support for Zai that can really have that strong early and mid-game presence in the Kunkka. Planet Odd come back with the tempo counter in the Lycan. They show a push strat. They're going to say, we're going to try and capitalize on those mid-game engagements and take down towers. EG say, that's just fine. We're completely comfortable playing at that pace. We'll pick a Bristleback, which peaks at or around the same time or earlier compared to the Lycan, and you can see they've got them fooled here. Odd are thinking we're going to see Universe again in that puck role that you showed us in game 1 and 2. We're going to ban out that Tinker with our last pick. We're worried about the mid hero of Sumail. EG are able to switch things up in that last position with the Enigma. Odd, they really need, again, they need a high damage hero. They're forced to go with the Invoker. They have nothing that can stop the Black Hole through the BKB, which Universe is going to get up very early here because of the farming potential. The Enigma also synergizes very well with that tempo of the Bristleback. They're going to have a very strong mid-game pushing presence as well as the potential to break high ground behind a strong combo out of Sumail's puck. So, I mean, this is kind of, and when you add in the fact that even today, they actually showed Sumail on the Bristleback. So you have the potential now, another team that's against this draft from EG, they can be going into that 5th pick with no idea whether Sumail is going to be on the puck, the Bristleback, or even a 5th pick hero. That kind of deception is a huge strategic advantage in the drafts, and you can see it worked out just tremendously well for EG in this series. Now, I want to highlight, of course, Universe reached a couple neat career milestones in this tournament. His first win, in fact, of the tournament made him only the 7th player all time to reach that 800 career win plateau that we've talked about. Kuro, of course, very recently became the first ever to 900, but Universe has had himself just a remarkable career. If you look back since the beginning of TI5, he actually has a 5.41 KDA average. That's just unheard of for the offlaners. If you look at the next closest offlaners, they're in the mid to low 4s. This is just a huge statistic for me. And when you look at, of course, his career record on the Faceless Void, which they also showed in this tournament, he's 48-10, over an 80% win rate on that hero all time in competitive play. Just an incredible weapon for them. And when you talk about mix-ups, you look at OG and some other teams that have actually been showing safe lane Void as being viable in this patch, particularly alongside that good Invoker play. I mean, I think that's another mix-up that EG can go to that they haven't even shown yet. I really like this team and the way that their hero pool and their drafts are evolving as we start to look toward TI. Of course, you got to talk about the individual performances by Sumail. Been absolutely awesome in this tournament. 16-0-10 in their opening series against IG on that Earthshaker. Absolutely dumpstered OP's Ember Spirit in the mid lane. This is becoming a real problem for IG. The Ember Spirit in particular is a hero that they've now picked several times for OP. They showed that at Starladder, and he's just looked very shaky on that hero. His early laning on that hero, as well as his mid-game spell usage, is just not quite what you'd expect, given the caliber of play that we've seen from OP in the past and from this team overall. In particular, I just do think we touched on it earlier in terms of their versatility and the fact that their lineup composition is very well differentiated across players. That's another concern, I think, for IG. Their problems, I feel, are fixable as we look toward TI, but they're definitely a team that needs that coaching. They do have some work to do. Sumail at this tournament so far, averaging better than a kill per 3 minutes. That's 25% better in terms of kill per minute as compared to the next closest player at the event, that being Mid1. He's just had himself a heck of an event, and of course today he turns in this unbelievable mid Ancient Apparition performance, something that we haven't seen in the pro game in quite some time. 15 kills, I believe, is 6th all time on the hero in professional play, 668 GPM as Ancient Apparition. That is almost 100 GPM higher than the next closest AA game of all time. Absolutely unbelievable on that hero, and an unbelievable couple of events so far for their young mid player. I got to talk about Secret. Of course, they're a team that looks like they have a very good chance to claim that top spot in the other group. And so far for them, for me, it's been Yapsor. 19.25 assists per game. That's number 2 overall at the event. And more importantly, an assist every 2 minutes. That's easily number 1 in terms of the rate at which he's putting them up. He's been involved in over 80% of Secret's kills at the event so far. And when you talk about kill participation, he's doing it on 2 heroes, primarily on the Nyx Assassin and the Clockwork, that are typically more pickup heroes. These pick-off heroes, rather. These are not 2 heroes that are necessarily always going to have high kill participation, because especially on the Nyx, but also on the Clockwork, you're often going to be around the edges of the fight, putting pressures on the enemy backliners, be they those supports like your Warlocks or those ranged DPSers. He has been in on a tremendous amount of kills, and he's also done what you expect these 2 heroes to do, that be putting pressure on key targets from the opposition. In their series against Liquid, which they won 2-0, he was in on 10 out of the 12 team kills of Miracle across the 2 games, put a tremendous amount of pressure on his PA with the Nyx Assassin in the first one. In the series today against OG, he had 3 out of the 7 team kills on Honest Puck in the first game. He was in on 6 out of their 7 kills on No Tails Luna in the second game. So not only has he had this great overall team fight presence, but he's really been focusing on high value targets on the other side. I really feel like his acquisition takes Secret from a team that I thought was pretty solid tier 2 to a team that has a chance to be definitely top 8 at TI, if not maybe top 6 to top 4. Miracle. This has been a mixed event for Liquid so far. Obviously, they dropped their first series to LGD FY, who's sort of validated that throughout the rest of the event. But even in their other series, Liquid has not necessarily looked uniformly strong. I do feel like they had one absolutely amazing performance by Miracle that in fact proved to be the difference between them going home and advancing to the playoff phase over OG. So Miracle had an Invoker game against OG where in the first 14 minutes of the game, he was 3-7-3. You can even see it here just past the 14-minute mark. He's actually bottom half in the net worth. He's behind Jerax's support Kunkka and practically tied with the S4 offlane Batrider. So he's having a terrible game. In fact, they actually killed him, Ditto G, 6 times in the first 10 minutes. That never had happened before. Miracle has about 300 pro games so far in his Pro Dota career. He had never died 6 times before 10 minutes before. In fact, he only had one other game where he died 5 times in the first 10 minutes, and that was a captain's draft game where he played as Ricky. So it was astonishing for him to have this bad an early game, and yet after that 14-minute mark, he went on to go 14-2-9 for the rest of the game. You can see that from the bottom half of the net worth distribution in the first 14 minutes, by 40 minutes, he is back on top, nearly about 20% higher than the legendary No-Tail Naga out of OG. He finished that game with 17 kills and 745 GPM, the second highest kill total and 6th highest GPM out of over 40 matches so far at the Epicenter event. This was one of the better comebacks, and if you're just going to watch one replay, a lot of people, when they watch replays from these big events, they have the tendency to watch like the big flashy performances by SUMAIL. Certainly couldn't blame you for watching that mid Earthshaker and mid AA, but I love these kinds of games where you get to see elite pro players on their signature hero have a bad early game, and you get to see the way that they stay in the game and still contribute to their team. I think this replay is the one that I've studied the most so far out of Epicenter, and there's a lot to learn from what Miracle is able to achieve together with his team throughout this game. LGD-FY. This certainly has been the Cinderella story so far of the event. And to me, it's really been the new SEA acquisition, Afu. This is a guy that was on the old Warriors Gaming Unity team that was a major qualifier. He's averaging 20 assists per game in 7 matches so far. That's tops at the event. He has an 8.81 KDA as a support. To put it in perspective, I know it's only 7 games, but he has the 4th highest KDA in the tournament right now behind his carry player Monet, behind Kezu and Sumail as a support player. He's been stellar so far in this tournament, and it's nothing new for him. If you look so far in his career, there are 280 players all time that have 300 or more career Pro Dota 2 matches. His 13.49 assists per game average is first among all of those players. Empire's Miposhka is the only other player that's averaging over 13 assists in that amount per game. Of course, coming up pretty soon in the next couple weeks, you're more than likely going to see Timms of TNC play his 300th career game, and he'll move into the lead with about 13.6. But this is still an unbelievable mark, and I really feel like he is keying this team. He sort of breathed new life. And the other thing that I really like about them, to go with that younger player, they have a couple of veterans that are super well established. Sorry for that horrible pun. Super has 746 career wins. That's tied for Burning for second most among all Chinese players all time, 15th overall. The only Chinese player that has more is FY with 769. DDC, of course, their other veteran support player, is also in that 700 win club, in the top 25 all time. So I really like the mix that they have. I feel like their hero pool is very well suited to the current meta. You've actually seen Super back on his signature Dragon Knight. He's 83 and 57 career on that Dragon Knight, almost twice as many wins as the next closest players, S4 and Mu. So I really think they have the right mix. This is going to be a very tough playoff bracket in this event, particularly if LFY drop their series against Secret tomorrow. They're going to have to fight through that quarterfinal matchup against their compatriots, IG, and possibly face EG in the semis. But this is a team that I think is playing very well now and still has a lot of room for improvement. Definitely watch out for them. Virtus Pro is a team that we hadn't mentioned yet. A lot of people are going to be disappointed by their performance at this event. They lost their series to EG. They dropped another map. They're finishing second in their group. I think they're fine. They, along with OG, are the two teams that I think had a little bit of sort of post-Kiev hangover. VP has played some Dota since the Kiev Major, but their Dream League matches that I saw, they just kind of didn't look like they were on their A game. They've pretty clearly been experimenting with some new hero picks. They featured the Io and the Treant in 4 out of their 9 games each, which are not 2 support heroes that they'd run very much in the past. They've run the Troll, which is a hero they had experimented with a little bit more, but it's also a hero that after starting red hot in 7.06 at Starladder got nerfed twice in the last 2 sub patches, and they've run that Troll 4 times in 9 games. So VP still look to me like a team that's experimenting a little bit. And when you come down to it, now, this 5-player VP roster right now is one of only 5 squads ever that have reached 100 Pro Dota 2 wins with a 70+% win rate. The other 4 being TI6 Newbie, TI4 and 5 EG, and TI3 Era Empire, which I think is probably the best team to not make it to the International. Of course, unfortunately, that TI5 Secret Squad, they're 1 game short, 99 wins. Rip them. That was an amazing team. But the point is, this VP roster is right up there with some of the better squads that we've ever seen in the game. I think that they're going to be fine going forward, and I think they are a legitimate threat in the playoffs to get past Liquid and really challenge that LFY secret winner in the semifinals. Speaking of that, here is the playoff bracket. Of course, there is one group phase series yet to be played tomorrow morning that will determine which of those 2 teams starts in the quarters against IG and which gets the bye directly into the semifinals. Both of those are going to have potentially a very difficult matchup in the second round. IG, I feel, is slumping a little bit. I like, in particular, Secret, but also LFY to get past IG into the semis. I do like Virtus Pro here to go ahead and take care of business against Liquid, who I feel is still a little bit uneven in their form. I think this is going to be the tightest sort of toss-up semifinal that potentially has TI invite implications. I do like EG to reach the grand final regardless who they face, and indeed win the entire tournament. I think EG so far in this patch is just showing a little bit more beyond what we've seen from any other team. And I'll close with just a brief update on TI invites. I get a lot of people asking me about this since the last video. I do think more or less not much has changed other than Newbie by winning Zotac have solidified their spot. They're definitely going to be in that direct invite field. Liquid, I still feel, is 90% around there to get in. I think with very high probability, the TI7 invites are actually going to be really simple. It's going to be these 6 teams. Anybody that is not already on the list that reaches the Epicenter Grand Finals, and there are only 2 teams left that aren't, that's Secret or LFY. So if they can get to the Epicenter Grand Finals, I think they get added. And I think the winners of Galaxy Battle and the Summit 7 get added, and that's it. And as long as that total, together with these 6, as long as that total doesn't exceed 9, I think we're done. It's very simple. If that total is less than 9, I think that there are a couple of other teams that have a chance to earn their way in without meeting these first 2 bullet points. NP is the big one. If NP reach the grand finals of the Summit, they will have 3 LAN top 3s in a month, which I think is definitely enough to get them in. The other possibilities are more remote. Secret, I think if they reach the Epicenter semifinals, either by beating LFY tomorrow or by winning in the quarters against IG, if they can reach the Epi semis and the Summit Grand Finals, that'll give them 2 LAN top 4s in a couple of weeks. I think they'll at least be in the conversation. The other thing, I do think if there are going to be 7 or more invites, that Valve would really like to find a way to invite a 3rd Chinese team. So I think there is an outside shot, perhaps if there end up being only 8 teams on this list, that if one of the 4 Chinese teams that's playing either in Galaxy Battle or in the Summit, those being LGD, the main squad, not LFY, and VGJ for the Summit, and VG and IGV in Galaxy Battles, all right, I think those teams do have a shot at getting on this list if they can reach the grand finals of one of those events. There's a small chance that TNC, if they make the final of Galaxy Battles, that'll give them 2 runner-up finishes at LANs in a month. I do think that's enough to, again, get them in the conversation. But as I discussed in the previous video, I do think the number of direct invites, it's hard capped at 10 and it's soft capped at 9. Remember that there are 6 qualifying regions now. I think there's going to be at least 1 team that plays through to a direct qualifier from each of those 6 regions. And I strongly suspect that Valve is going to keep the wild card around, which likely limits 9. Now, because 4 of the 6 teams still alive at Epicenter are already on the list, and there's 1 team at Galaxy Battle and arguably up to 2 teams if VP and Secret do well at Epicenter. That'll be 2 teams at the Summit that are already on the list. So there is a strong possibility that you could get some redundancy here and the list doesn't grow, all right? So I think by and large, the scenarios are probably going to be pretty simple. It's really only if we start talking about 10 teams that you have to make some difficult choices, all right? There you go. I think we're going to see another couple days of great Dota from Moscow. I will be traveling to China next week to help bring you coverage of the Galaxy Battle, and I'll be covering TI invites as well from there. Thank you guys very much for watching. This is Nahaz. I will talk to you soon.